We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to be with you today on the program. This is Walker Wildman. The name of the program is At the Core, and this is American Family Radio Network. You can always find us on the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just type in the name of the program, and you can easily subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, we've got the video up on all the major social media platforms. You can watch the show on AFR's social media handles and the At the Core Facebook page as well. And lastly, stream.afa.net for the video, stream.afa.net for the video. Well, jumping to Scripture, turning our attention to Scripture, which is where we've been this week, John chapter 16, looking towards the latter part of John chapter 16, verses 31 and 32. Jesus says, do you now believe, talking to the disciples, indeed the hour is coming, yes, has now come, that you will be scattered each to his own, and will leave me alone, and yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. These things I have spoken to you, verse 33, that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And so this foreshadowing of the disciples being scattered is one of multiple instances in which Jesus foretells the future there for the disciples. They ended up, of course, being scattered, not by their own choosing, but through persecution. They scattered, and the gospel ended up spreading into all the earth, and is still spreading to all the earth per the Great Commission as well. And so Jesus knew that, hey, in order for the disciples to obey me, in order for them to scatter and and share the gospel to all the earth, they're going to have to face persecution. They're going to have to face difficulty in order to get them out of Jerusalem. That's what John chapter 16 is about. All right, let's turn our attention to some of the news of the week. One thing we've been following is this situation with Iran and with the U.S., and of course Israel's in the mix as well, undoubtedly. And one thing that I talked a little bit about earlier in the week on Wednesday, but I actually didn't have the clip, was all of the times that the Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has predicted that Iran either has or will imminently have nuclear weapons. And so going back 33 plus years, Netanyahu has been warning of nuclear weapons with Iran. And actually, during a congressional testimony before we invaded Iraq, Netanyahu, when questioned about which nations pose the greatest risk regarding nuclear weapons and nuclear capability, Netanyahu actually said Iran and Iraq. He said those two, Iran and Iraq. And then several months later, we actually went into Iraq and, of course, never found weapons of mass destruction. But nonetheless, I wanted to bring that clip back. This is a over 2-minute clip, and I'm not sure, Bobby, do you have this one ready to go? Okay, so this is going to be Bibi Netanyahu over the last 33 years, since 1992, warning that Iran either has nukes or is going to have nukes in the coming weeks. This is clips.
You've probably heard this line before.
Iran has never given up its quest for nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them.
That's because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this for more than 30 years, claiming Iran is close to having
nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Atomic bombs.
In 1992, as a member of parliament, Netanyahu addresses the Knesset. He says, within 3 to 5 years, we can assume that Iran will become autonomous in its ability to develop and produce a nuclear bomb. 3 years later, in his book Fighting Terrorism, he repeats the same time frame, 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fast forward to 2002. Netanyahu testifies before a U.S. congressional committee actively calling for the invasion of Iraq.
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran.
The invasion happens months later. No weapons of mass destruction are found in Iraq. This is a fragment of a 2009 U.S. State Department cable released by WikiLeaks. Netanyahu tells members of Congress that Iran is 1 or 2 years away from being capable of developing nuclear weapons.
They're online.
It's 2012, and Netanyahu is holding up his infamous cartoon bomb at the UN General Assembly.
By next spring, at most by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb.
And now, 33 years after Netanyahu's first so-called imminent warning, Israel attacks Iran.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
That's despite the U.S. Director of National Intelligence saying Iran isn't building a nuclear weapon months earlier.
Iran lied.
But for Netanyahu,
Big time.
the slogan has been the same for decades. Dmitry Medvedenko, Al Jazeera.
Well, there you have it. That's a pretty lengthy report on the long-term predictions of Iran having a nuclear weapon. And I'm not, well, let's just say this. That can't be, it can't be true for 30 plus years that Iran is weeks away from a nuclear weapon. It just, I mean, we're not all that dumb. And so it's quite frustrating to me that we've been told since before I was born that Iran is weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Now, as far as talking points and messaging, it's a very compelling message because who wants Iran to have nuclear weapons? Nobody. At least none of our allies. And actually, most of the Arab nations in the region don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either because of how unstable they are. But my point in bringing this up is that the same messaging isn't going to work this time because we've seen this rodeo before. And so I don't know what the Trump administration is looking at, what intelligence they have. Obviously, most of it's classified. They're not going to tell us until there's a point where they can tell us. But nonetheless, I just want honesty with the American people. And if we're being honest, this is likely about more than Iran having nuclear weapons. That's just a fact. This is likely about more than whether or not Iran has nuclear weapons. Now, could they be pursuing them? Of course. Were our strikes in June of 25 effective? It looks like not very much. Because here we are 8 months later and we're back at the nuclear Iran talk. And so I don't know what the reasoning and the rationale is going to be should we make strikes. And if we don't make strikes, that in and of itself is an embarrassment because we've spent tens of billions of dollars repositioning over half of the U.S. military to, as far as assets go, to the region. So we've built up the most assets since the Gulf War in the region and to do nothing. So it's likely decisions have already been made that we're going to do something, but the extent that we go is what's probably to be determined. And then you've got these talks, these negotiations in Geneva. And my question is, what's there to negotiate? These negotiations go back to Obama. These go back 3, technically 4 administrations ago, and we're still talking to Iran about whether or not they can have nukes. How much more is there to talk about? I mean, once again, we've seen this rodeo before. And all of this isn't to belittle or, not take seriously what Iran is doing over there. Obviously, Iran's a bad actor, terrible human rights abuses. They want to see Israel obliterated. This is according to their own messaging and talking points. And the human rights within Iran are horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Latest reports are upwards of 30 to 40,000 protesters have been killed, slaughtered in recent months in Iran due to the uprisings. Women's rights is virtually non-existent there. And so Iran is a bad actor, no doubt. Iran has impure intentions, no doubt. That's not hard to prove. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And what's the end game here? Because there's a large faction within the U.S. government that want regime change. I mean, they say this out loud all the time. We want regime change in Iran. But that's a lot easier said than done. What makes Iran different than maybe Venezuela and other places is how entrenched they are and how ideologically driven they are. With Venezuela, you've got people below Maduro that are rational people that want to survive and don't want to also be arrested. And so they go along to get along and they cooperate with the U.S. government. But when you're talking about the Ayatollah and the Iranians, this is not your average negotiating party. Hence that we've been talking to them since President Obama, and we've effectively gained zero ground with Iran in our negotiations going back to Obama. Effectively have gained zero ground. And so President Trump sent Kushner and Witkoff over there to Geneva, and I think this is just all a waste of time. It's just all a waste of time because what's Iran going to do after 20 years of negotiations? Go, yeah, you know what? We're going to give you the nukes. We're going to give you the nukes. And so something's going to have to give here. Not all of these things can be true at the same time. And it'll be quite interesting to see how the Trump administration pivots on this Iran situation. And look, there's no doubt that having a more Western-friendly leader in Iran, whatever that looks like, would likely be better in the long run for America and Israel and our allies and the entire region for that matter. Iran is responsible for just an insane amount of instability in the region. They fund all the terror networks, all the proxy networks. They obviously have launched multiple rounds of ballistic missiles over to Israel. They've bombed U.S. bases. They've killed U.S. troops. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of time convincing the American people why the Iranian regime is bad. The question is, what do we do about it? And how does it go? And I think if something can be worked out where this doesn't create mass instability and the loss of U.S. troops, I think the American people can probably get on board with it. I mean, you're talking about if you're able to get rid of the Ayatollah and install a Western-friendly regime, government, with no U.S. casualties and minimum civilian casualties, that could create long-term stability in the region and would effectively shield Israel for decades to come in the region. And so that's a net positive if it can be done in the right way. So we'll see how it goes. We'll keep tracking it. We got a couple segments left. Stick around. AFA Action is the governmental affairs affiliate of American Family Association. As part of our mission to inform and mobilize voters and government officials, AFA Action has 3 divisions designed to address specific facets of our country's needs. These 3 divisions are the Center for Government Renewal, iVoter Guide, and the Center for Judicial Renewal.
At the Center for Government Renewal, our goal is to advance biblical and constitutional principles. We are building a movement to defend the rights of families and people of faith. We are passing innovative legislation in the states, pushing back against Washington, D.C., and equipping leaders for the fight. With your help, we can build a brighter future for our children and our country.
iVoter Guide is known for its accuracy and integrity in researching and evaluating candidates on your ballot, so that faith-based voters like you can be good stewards of your citizenship and vote for candidates that share your values. Thousands of candidates, from president and Congress to state legislatures and even your local school board, are evaluated based on their positions on issues like the right to life, religious liberty, national defense, the economy, and border security. iVoter Guide helps you vote wisely.
At the Center for Judicial Renewal, we keep tabs on federal judges so that we're fully prepared to hand solid recommendations to the president in the event that a Supreme Court seat opens up. We research and rank prospective judges according to these 10 principles of a constitutional judge. Essentially, we look for judges with the best long-term, demonstrable record of commitment to the constitutional role of judges, which is to decide cases according to the original meaning of the Constitution and legislative texts, and to never legislate from the bench.
Each of these departments play a crucial role in fulfilling AFA Action's vision to see our country successfully preserving life, liberty, and the ability to pursue happiness. To learn more and to get involved, go to afaaction.net.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program here on American Family Radio. Walker Wildman here on At the Core, hosted each week by myself and Rick Green. And it's good to be back with you on today's edition of At the Core. As a reminder, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Joining us now is my good friend Jason Rapert, president of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, the largest association of faith-based Christian lawmakers in the country. And also he's a former Arkansas state representative, been in the fight for a long time, going back to the Ten Commandments battle there in the state. Jason, welcome to the program.
It's good to be here with you, Walker. And before anything else, thanks for all that you and your family do for Christian conservatism in our country. And we want you to keep it up, and may God expand your borders, brother.
Amen. Appreciate that, Jason. Hey, you and I were texting back and forth. I know you're busy, I'm busy, so we don't have time to connect very often, but I wanted to get you on the program because of the various things you guys are working over at NACL. One of the things that you highlighted was the work and the threat of Islam in America. And this has been kind of sidelined, if you will. There's been a lot of other issues with Marxism and stuff going on in our country. But Islam is still a threat to America, and we've been importing a lot of Muslims into our nation and then eventually making them legal residents or citizens. So talk about this kind of lurching long-term threat of Islam and particularly Sharia law in America.
Well, it is a big issue. And you know what's interesting about it, Walker, it's not brand new. Many people have been trying to sound the alarm about this for a very long time. And just to get to the heart of it, as we speak about some specifics, I can't name you any other worldview at the moment that claims to be a religion, and in my opinion, cloaks itself in religion, that actually says that it's okay for us to kill someone that says we do not believe in their worldview or believe in their faith. I don't hear that in Buddhism. I don't hear that in Hinduism. You definitely don't hear it in Christianity. And we know that it wasn't Pentecostals and Baptists that were flying the planes into the World Trade Center September the 11th of 2001. And so we have had many instances over the last few years just to kind of to say this for your viewers and listeners, you can go back 20 years ago. We had a gentleman that came to the state of Arkansas, and he was a radicalized Muslim believer from Tennessee, and he parked his vehicle, waited outside a National Guard office, and when two soldiers walked out, he fired on them, killing Private Andy Long and very seriously wounding the other soldier. He killed Andy Long, and he declared on the scene this was an act of jihad. We have had other instances that if you look up and Google these and these news reports over the years, where people have actually claimed they were acting in the name of Allah or carrying out an act of jihad. And we have imams in the country today, right now, that are saying America is going to be taken over by Islam. You've seen what's happening in the state of Texas, that they are taking a stand against this. We see what's happened in New York City, which is unbelievable, that they have elected an open Islamic believer who claims to also be a socialist. And then we see what's happening in Minneapolis. These people do not want to integrate, they want to take over. The same thing happened in Dearborn, Michigan. And you saw that immediately after Mamdani was elected in New York City, they began blasting the Islamic prayers over loudspeakers. Now, I'm going to ask you, if we blasted Billy Graham over loudspeakers in downtown New York City, you know what the response would be.
Lawsuit after lawsuit, right?
Lawsuit after lawsuit. And I know we have a limited amount of time, but I just want to hit a couple things. And I'm going to make mention of something before I forget it. This is not my book, Walker. This is one of our buddies, Bill Federer.
Yeah, I've got that in my office. Yep.
Look, I'm going to tell you something. This is what every American needs to know about the Quran, a history of Islam in the United States, Walker.
Yep.
If people in the United States read just the introduction, there's enough information there to tell you that Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Bill Federer is on our National Advisory Board with you, Walker, and I do urge people to get that book. What is the NACL doing about it? Well, as you know, the NACL now has local, state, and federal elected officials in all 50 states. We meet twice a year in person. We meet every month virtually. And these elected officials are dealing with some of the most serious issues facing our country today and proposing model legislation to deal with it. Specifically, what happened last year in 2025, some of us, including myself that served in the legislatures previously, we remember the movement for a law called American Laws for American Courts. This is an answer to people that say we do not want Sharia law being utilized in our jurisdictions to make decisions and to affect the everyday lives of people in our communities. And I won't go down because you're going to need an hour to go down the idea of can you actually say you're going to ban a specific belief? That's different. What American Laws for American Courts does is to make sure that American courts and American laws are the only body of law that can affect the daily lives of people in our jurisdictions. In Idaho and Georgia, this law is now being debated and we hope will be passed. So those are two states where people can take action. And so the NACL endorsed American Laws for American Courts as a model law, and we recommend that every state take this up across the country. And another thing we did, I mentioned that story about Private Andy Long. We passed a few years ago in Arkansas what is called, we named it after Andy's Law. And here's what it does. It creates a civil cause of action so that families or anybody connected to someone killed in a terrorist act, you can sue and go after the money and the funding of any entity connected to that terrorist killer. Because as you know, Walker, the only way to truly defeat this ideology is stop their money in the United States of America. And so what's happening is that around the country, groups like CARE, the Council of America Islamic Relations, and some of the Islamic entities, they are doing their best to create a new America. And when you think about this, I wish you had time. Maybe you'll get this out someday and share this. But reading through some of the beliefs that the Muslim believer adheres to, and how completely anathema that is to the American ideals, the Judeo-Christian history and heritage of our country, I'm going to tell you it's very serious. Why is it serious? There has never been a situation where Islam gets a foothold that they do not try to dominate. This is why when you look across North Africa and the Middle East, they wipe out believers in every area that they go. What's been happening in Syria since the new leader took over in Syria after Assad? They began slaughtering more Christians and more of the Druze, which is a very small ethnic group there in Syria. The Yazidis in Iraq, they literally wiped them out. We have a problem in Syria right now. I just got a message for us to stand up on Capitol Hill with people that are trying to defend Christians in Syria. There is a concern that if something is not done, they're going to wipe out what's left of any Christian aspect of Syria. It's important to the United States of America because this belief system, this worldview, is a belief system that dominates women. If you want to have a situation where women are not appreciated, Sharia law is going to do that.
Yeah.
If you want a situation where people are killed simply for disagreeing with Islamic leadership, just look at Sharia law. And the other thing I will tell you is the deep-seated hatred. I was in Israel last year, twice as a matter of fact. And I was at the Nova Music Festival site, Walker. I don't know if you've been there yet or not. But I'm telling you, my friend, when you walk through that site and you see the pictures of those young people that were there, and they were partying, they were having an event, and know that when those radicals came through that fence, and these were not just military soldiers, these were Hamas Palestinian believers.
Yeah.
They came and recorded themselves giving praise to Allah as they literally killed and mercilessly tormented those people there on that day, October the 7th, 3 years ago now, going, I guess, in 23. And so when you look at Europe, Western Europe, and I will tell people, look up Geert Wilders, Geert. Geert Wilders just stood on the floor of the Dutch Parliament the other day and again reiterated the fact that they have to take a stand against this belief system. I really believe, Walker, that in America we've created this problem in some ways because we have failed to clearly articulate the fact that Islam is not just your average, ordinary other religious belief system. It is a world domination theology that everywhere in the world they take over and they upend democracy and freedom and definitely don't allow for Christian believers. And so I appreciate you and your program for highlighting this and absolutely encourage people to educate themselves because we are a nation built on Judeo-Christian foundations. And this country is incompatible with those that push this ideology.
Yeah. And to your point, Jason, once again, we're talking to Jason Rapert with National Association of Christian Lawmakers. This fight goes back to the early days of America. I mean, the entire, I think it was the Marines, the Marine Corps was started primarily to combat the Muslim pirates. When we were transiting over to Europe to deliver trade and goods, they were intercepting our ships and demanding ransom and killing our own sailors. And so this goes back hundreds of years, and obviously it goes back with Europe further than that. But as far as America goes, we've been battling this since the founding of our country, and that's not an exaggeration. And then, but to your point, this is one of the belief systems, one of the few that exist that justify violence, murder, death as a means to an end. And so whatever it takes to slaughter the infidel, there's even in the Quran justification for lying as long as it's advancing Islam. And so there's a lot there. And that's what folks need to understand. And to your point, we've largely created this problem, at least domestically. There's no reason over the last 30 years we should be importing millions of Muslims. I mean, that just from Somalia or elsewhere or the Middle East, that just doesn't make sense, Jason, that we've spent years importing people through legal immigration means, whether it's refugee programs, etc., that don't fundamentally agree with America. I mean, that's just suicidal. I mean, there's tons of ways that we can help people without mass importing them into America. And so, Jason, we got about 3 minutes left. That's one thing that we're going to have to address as a country moving forward, is to stop importing people, particularly Muslims, that fundamentally disagree with America.
I agree with that. And we do have a short time here, so I will not be too lengthy. But I will tell you that this issue is one of the major threats that we have to face if we're going to save the country. And Walker, I know that you get information as one of our advisory board members. I want to make mention of one more thing, if you don't mind. This is the book the NACL just put out, Save the Nation, The Crisis in America and How to Secure the Republic. If you go to christianlawmakers.com, that will give you an opportunity to learn more about the book. But there are 16 voices of great leaders across the country. Congressman Bob McEwen has a chapter in the book. The first chapter is from Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and he starts the book off. Pastor John Hagee has the chapter on Israel. I take a chapter in there as well. Many of our friends that we know across the country that are fighting to save the country are in this book. And the key is that we have to get people to actually educate themselves, to stand up and take a stand. Last thing, because I know you got to wrap this segment up and get to talking with you, Walker, and it just makes me say I wish we had more time because there's so many other issues going on. But I will tell you that the 40 million Christians that are out there still not active, I am praying for revival in the pulpits of those churches, because America is truly still on the brink. If we lose the midterm elections in the United States here, and we lose the Republican majorities in Congress, the whiplash is going to be one of the worst whiplashes we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because these Democrats are not your grandma and grandpa's Democrat Party.
Yep, they're coming after us.
Yeah, these are the folks like AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib that are yelling at the president during the State of the Union. They are holding signs up. They won't stand up when we say, could we all stand up to say we're going to actually fight for American values first? No, they don't. And so, Walker, you all are key to this, because I know that you're reaching the engaged Christian electorate, but we've got to find a way to break through. And that means that those pastors, if there's anything somebody could do, say, well, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Walker, they need to pray that the Holy Ghost literally speak to the heart and mind of those pastors in those churches so that they cannot remain silent anymore, that they absolutely are compelled to speak the truth. Because if they don't, the great United States of America that you and I know will not exist if we don't take a stand and protect our country at this important, critical time.
Amen. Hey, Jason, thanks so much for coming on. Give our folks your website real quick.
It's christianlawmakers.com or .org. You do christianlawmakers.com or .org, you'll get there. And we invite people to engage with us, become a part of what we're doing. We do have people in all 50 states now. And one thing that you would want to know, Walker, is that we're proud of Congressman Marlin Stutzman of Indiana, just became our first U.S. House Chair.
Excellent.
We're excited about the leadership that we're seeing on Capitol Hill as well.
Amen. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it, brother. All right, there you have it, folks. We got one segment left. That's Jason Rapert, NACL. We'll be back in a few.
And one thing that you would want to know, Walker, is that we're proud of Congressman Marlin Stutzman of Indiana.
Amen. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it, brother. All right, there you have it, folks. We got one segment left. That's Jason Rapert.
Presenting documentaries, church curriculum, American Family Radio shows, and our Cultural Institute's
founding documents and in the U.S. Constitution itself. Because our founders were creator, not our government.
AFA Stream is a vital step that we are taking to fulfill our vision. You'll find top-notch resources that address the issues of our day related to marriage, family, the sanctity of life, and many others. Start streaming today. Stream.afa.net.
At the Core podcast are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Core here on American Family Radio. Chris Woodward is with us, as he is each Friday, from American Family News. AFN.net is their URL. Leading news from a Christian perspective. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Well, Chris, there's so much we're going to talk about.
Indeed.
We got a lot of news on the economic front, most of it positive. But I've just, as we're recording this program for Friday, we do it on Thursday afternoons, for those who don't know. The buildup in the Middle East just continues, Chris. I'm looking now. A lot of this open source intelligence, by the way, is pretty fascinating. It's kind of shocking how much we can know about the U.S. military through these open source means. But nonetheless, we're still ferrying fighter jets to the Middle East still. Right. And we've been doing this for a month.
Right.
And just today, well, just in the last 24 hours, a dozen more F-15s are on their way to the Middle East over the Atlantic. Chris, this continued buildup, to me, is only pointing towards fighter. Last 24 hours, a dozen more F-15s are on their way to the Middle East. To me, is only pointing towards conflict.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's one thing to ferry still after the State of the Union, after these negotiations in Geneva, still sending.
You've already pointed out that we're about to do something. Why else would you move all of this manpower? Because we've tried to bring them to the table. We've laid out our stated concerns. They haven't met our concerns. Even people that voted for Donald Trump, because and they'll say things like, "Well, he said the administration will say, well, this is a different animal because Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon." Right. We heard that himself.
Point. To justify any type of military action against Iran at this point. I mean, the case is going to have to be made to the public by the president with his leading advisors and cabinet members that this is a major problem, that if we don't address this now, it's going to have consequences down the road. And they just need to be honest with us that, they don't just need to come out and say, Iran was a week away from nuclear weapons and we had to intervene, and then just walk away from the podium, because as I've played clips, they've been saying that for 30 years. And it can't all be true. So we'll see what the case is, but I do think it needs to be made to the American people.
Yeah.
But something's going to go down over there. The timeline of that is to be determined. Chris, on the economic front, mortgage rates.
Yes.
I've got this clip here we'll play. Okay. This is going to be clip 7, mortgage rates at their lowest place in 4 years. Let's listen.
For the first time since 2022, the average U.S. long-term mortgage rate is below 6%. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac says the benchmark 30-year fixed-rate mortgage rate fell to 5.98%.
Well, there you have it. That's a Salem News report. Chris, below 6%, that's a milestone.
Yeah, it really is.
Over the last 4 to 5 years.
And, it shouldn't be new to anybody because the president did mention fairly early on in his record-setting State of the Union address that mortgage rates were at their lowest in years. So the president scooped a lot of these news outlets that have correctly pointed this out in recent days. But mortgage rates are down. Hopefully they're going to continue to go down. Some people that just find something to complain about will still say, well, it could be a lot lower. But, it's certainly a lot better than it has been. And we all know we would not be talking about mortgage rates being their lowest since 2022 had the election gone differently.
Yeah, exactly. This is a good trend, Chris. And so we'll hope it continues down to the 5s. Maybe even down to the 4s as far as mortgage rates. The lower the better as far as home buyers goes.
Yeah. And, obviously people are buying homes, which means people are building homes, which means people are getting paid to make things, as we've talked about on the show. I will say it until the Lord returns, and we're all reporting and airing from the Good News Network. But you cannot be a superpower if you don't make stuff, which means we need to manufacture things like tools that construction people use. And because construction people are employed, that means food trucks are going, and that means all kinds of businesses built around the construction industry are thriving. And you need those kinds of things because not everything in America needs to be a white-collar job. We need blue-collar people. There's nothing wrong with working in blue-collar work. We need all kinds of different color collars working to make this country we call great continue.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other things you guys are tracking over at AFN?
Well, we talk about the State of the Union. One of the things that pro-life individuals and organizations are upset about is the fact that the president did not mention abortion at all. For example, we have a story on AFN.net where people like Kristen Hawkins at Students for Life are upset that the president didn't at least tout the fact that we've defunded Planned Parenthood for a short amount of time. That was something that a lot of people appreciated, and it's certainly something that a lot of Republican voters would like to see members of Congress and the president do again next year and the year after that, because Planned Parenthood, for example, has done a lot of abortions, and they want to continue doing abortions. And because the president didn't give it any kind of lip service, people like Kristen are concerned that this may actually turn people off and cause some people not to vote in the midterm elections because they've sold us a bill of goods.
Yeah. Well, the midterms are going to be interesting. And the Democrats, as you mentioned the State of the Union earlier, and I said this earlier this week, but Chris, it's just hard to fathom that the Democrats can gather up enough votes on election day to win elections. Mm-hmm. Now, you take, some deep blue congressional districts or California U.S. Senate races. Okay, I get it. There's enough Democrats there. But just generally speaking around the country, this party's so off the rails. And Republicans aren't perfect. I've got my beef with them. I think the Senator Thune needs to do more. Republicans definitely have their problems. They're the world's worst on spending too much money, blowing through the deficit. But you look over at the Democrats, and they're making the Republicans look like saints over here, and the Republicans aren't saints. Democrats are so off the rails, Chris. It's hard for me to understand how they win elections.
Yeah,
and we'll see how the midterms go, but I just can't believe my country is at this place where these guys and gals can win elections.
Yeah, well, if you ask Donald Trump, the reason Democrats win elections is because they, quote, cheat. I mean, he said it as much on air this week. It's the only way they can win. I think the president did what he needed to do, though, overall in the State of the Union, because he made it about the economy. We all know that he inherited a mess from Joe Biden, which he did say, but he went on to talk about the ways that he's fixed it and things that are better now in the 1+ year that he's been in office and how things are going to continue to be better. I think he really made that case to the public. And I think the part where he kind of sealed the deal or dropped the mic was when he asked all of them to stand if they agreed that Americans are more important than illegal aliens. And the fact that you had a lot of Democrats in places that are like purple or, red with liberal tendencies, the fact that Mark Kelly and other people didn't stand for that moment really shows you that they're not putting you in front of their own needs.
Yeah.
And really, when you get into the whole transgender situation, when he did the whole, these people are crazy.
Right.
That really showed to the people out there that were watching, the fact that Mark Kelly and other people didn't stand for that, their own needs.
Yeah.
And really, when you get into the whole transgender situation, when he did the whole
Yeah, them sitting through a lot of that was just baffling to me. I mean, it's very, very bad optic. Maybe they did. Maybe they view it as motivating their base.
Yeah.
Because they do have a lot of radical support.
Democrats don't care.
Yeah, and that's what I hope voters see through, Chris, because just don't do good stuff for the country. Now, you can say, they impeached Donald Trump and I don't like Trump, or some EV credits out of the whole gig.
Right.
But for the most part, everything the Democrats and the millionaires and the billionaires, they accuse President Trump and Republicans of cozying up to the millionaires and billionaires. But in reality, that's what the Democrats do. Like President Trump's tax cuts are for the working class. Yeah, they're for companies too, but companies employ people.
Exactly.
But Democrats, literally, all they do is cozy up and do favors for their own. And so they're not even the working class party anymore, is my point, even though the unions largely support them.
Yeah, something that I think nails your point is the fact that, and we've seen this in recent days since the Supreme Court ruled against Trump's tariffs, which I'm happy to get into. But if you get Elizabeth Warren, Gavin Newsom, and other people out there saying the president owes you a refund. I saw I've seen crazy things from people saying, like, the average American paid $1,000 more because of Trump's tariffs. And these are things that Democrats are saying when we all know they were silent on the issue of Bidenflation from 2022 through 2024. They didn't say anything about the cost of living under Biden's watch, and they didn't criticize him for any of that stuff. And matter of fact, the things that they approved, like the COVID checks and all these other things they were throwing out there, made our lives terrible for 3 years. That's the reason why you couldn't afford eggs and Cheerios and milk and all these other things.
Yeah, I think we just have to continue. I think conservatives just have to continue speaking the truth and continue creating alternative media. That is one bright thing that I'm seeing, is that although your CNNs of the world do still have a lot of viewers, a lot of followers, relatively speaking, that's continuing to dwindle. And so I think conservative independent media are the way of the future, and that's how we can really shape discourse in a manner where the truth gets out.
Yeah. One of the things, and maybe they've been doing this for a while and I just didn't notice it, I don't know, but during the State of the Union on my television at the house, I had the White House's YouTube channel pulled up. And so we were watching the State of the Union through the White House's YouTube channel. And they had two boxes. They had the president speaking, and then from time to time, like infographics would pop up. And I think that was a genius move, whoever came up with that idea. And forgive me again if he's been doing this for months and I just now noticed. I maybe have rolled on different sources to get his audio. But it was a really good idea, because you not only heard the president talk about things, but you could see things to show you what he's done or how things are better compared to when Biden was in office. And they need to continue doing that and find other ways to do it on different channels, because people... A lot of times now, people get information through audible means. They listen to us on the radio. But sometimes, too, it's just little simple messages. People don't read 5,000-word articles anymore. I wish they did, but they don't. And so we have to find a way to inform people using the ways they want to be informed.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are visual now, visual, heavy on the graphics. I noticed ever since COVID, the graphics, the charts, it's just gone crazy on social media. And it's so funny because it can be something that's like totally inaccurate, but you throw it like on a pie chart or something. It's like, well, that's the gospel right there. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And so you do have to double check your sources and where you're getting your information. Chris, the midterms are just right around the corner, and Democrats have made it abundantly clear they will impeach President Trump at every chance they get, should they take back the House. And there's been a lot of this redistricting going on in California and in other places. I think Virginia, they picked up like 4 or 5. Democrats picked up a projected 4 to 5 seats. Indiana, I think, is the only state holding out that hasn't done redistricting yet, which it's kind of getting too late because we're in primary season. But this is going to be interesting to see, because all the major models are showing, Democrats are going to take back the House. It's going to be interesting to see how much momentum the Democrats can really get, considering how radical their party is.
Yeah, Indiana's been an interesting state for years now. And I say that based on the fact that, like, when Mike Pence was the governor, he kind of waffled on a Religious Freedom Restoration Act issue that the legislature passed. He didn't want it done in those words because it might be hurtful to people or stuff like that. And then you had another governor, the one between Pence and the current governor. The governor I'm thinking of didn't like a bill that barred males and female sports. And you're kind of like, it's Indiana. Like, why in the world would you not move in this direction? You're not California or Connecticut, for that fact. So
and to your point, like some of these Republicans that balk at doing gerrymandering, I mean, come on, guys. We've been gerrymandering since our country was founded.
Yes.
States have been altering congressional districts forever.
Right.
And you act all of a sudden that we've got this, we're morally against. Come on. It's not, this is not, thus the Bible says you can't redistrict. Now, is it an unfortunate habit that bites both sides? Yeah, it is. Sometimes it hurts Republicans, sometimes it hurts Democrats, but it's completely legal. And every state does it.
Yeah, it's similar to the whole filibuster argument. Well, we can't do that because if Democrats get in there, they're just going to do it against us. And stop losing elections.
Exactly.
If you're worried about elections, get your messaging right. Do what the people expect you to do and what they pay you to do, and don't lose elections.
Yeah. Be more aggressive. Fight to win.
Wear a T-shirt that says "Who's your daddy?"
Yeah,
I mean, when you vote from the floor.
Hey, you better be careful. Trump will do that.
He will.
That would be
That
something
and
he would
these
do
people are crazy.
if he wore T-shirts. I've never seen him wear a T-shirt. Isn't that crazy?
Haven't either.
I've seen him wear a golf polo.
You probably found one on AI or so.
Yeah.
Grok may have a generated photo.
Yeah, but he's in that suit just about every day. All right, Chris, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us. As a reminder, subscribe to the podcast At the Core wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you next week.